Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of King of Baking, Kim Tak-goo, also known as Bread, Love, and Dreams, a South Korean television series from 2010 that earned some huge viewership ratings and numbers in its home country. But is it as great as its popularity would have you believe? I don't think so. Now, this is about a family-owned bread company that endures vicious internal conflict between the family members. Now, our lead protagonist is one of the sons, Tak-goo Kim, who wants to become a great baker. Now, the story is told over 30 episodes, 60 minutes each, so it's one of the, longer K-dramas, I guess you could say. Not excessively long, but a little longer than normal. And it spans approximately 25 years of this man's life. Now, the opening 6 episodes focus on his birth and childhood, then we fast forward to his adult life. Now, much of the conflict in this show is driven by infidelity that's established during the opening episodes. So, the mother, named In-suk, is under great pressure to bear a son who can take over the family business. Meanwhile, the father, Il-jung, cheats on her a few times, which results in the birth of our protagonist, whose mother, Mi-soon, is one of the common folk. So because of this, In-suk does not consider Tak-goo to be worthy of taking over the business, so she uses all of her power to prevent him from doing so. Now, meanwhile, one of Tak-goo's childhood friends, Yoo-kyung, attempts to move on from her abusive father. Now, the easiest way to review King of Baking is to do it chronologically. Now, this will be a non-spoiler review, of course. The opening 4 episodes, I think, are rather good. It does a good job of setting up the characters and the conflicts. But then we get episodes 5 through 7, which have some of the worst script writing you can possibly imagine. Now, the most obvious case of this is the transition from childhood to adulthood for our lead character. The story establishes a bunch of characters early, then fast forward like 12 years in a single instant. Not a problem per se, but the way that the script brings all of the characters back together is just mind-numbingly stupid. So let me give you a non-spoiler example here. So soon after he's introduced as an adult, our protagonist gets beat up by a bunch of guys and passes out. Well, he just so happens to pass out in front of a bakery. Now, that's fine. There's, I'm sure, plenty of bakeries in South Korea, I'm sure. But this bakery just so happens to be owned by an old dude who the protagonist just so happened to run into 12 years earlier while being chased by kidnappers. And then this old dude just so happens to run into our protagonist in his greatest time of need. That's a pretty big freaking coincidence. But that's not all, because this bakery just so happens to have 2 other employees that are directly linked to important events in our protagonist's childhood. Is this like the only bakery in South Korea? I was just wondering this. And it gets even worse, because there's another character from our protagonist's past who is determined to work for the evil mother's baking company for no apparent reason. Why not work somewhere else? It's just an extremely lazy way to throw her back into the storyline. The show does this all the time. It's almost as if South Korea was the size of one square block. At one point, our protagonist discovers someone's identity by seeing the hat they dropped in a subway, which just so happens to have their name engraved underneath the cap. I'm not sure how frequent people do that in this world, but I don't know. I just found it to be kind of dumb. So this show does have some absolutely brutal script writing at times that is distracting and extremely lazy. But wait, Erik, you might say, K-dramas always do this kind of thing to a certain degree. And to that I would say, yes, you are correct. But the better K-dramas do a much better job of glossing it over or using it in interesting ways. A lot of times, the better K-dramas, in those, you don't really realize that they're using a contrivance or a coincidence along the way because everything around the contrivance is so absorbing. King of Baking, on the other hand, is nothing but improbable coincidence stacked on top of improbable coincidence for like multiple episodes in a row. It's just way too distracting. there are some other notable flaws here, a handful of which I'll list out for you now. The young actor who plays Tak-goo during his younger years is not very good. He definitely overacts and hams up the "I'm such a country bumpkin" shtick. You can tell he's really trying to do the Korean version of the country accent, but he's doing it way too overdramatically. I've seen people do this accent more convincingly in other areas, let's put it that way. Other movies and TV shows. I know he's just a kid, but great child actors basically grow on trees in South Korea. They should have found one for this role. And with that said, the actor who plays the adult version of Tak-goo isn't much better. He's not. I know you ladies out there are going to get mad at me for throwing some shade at Si-yoon, but he overacts too. I know this is a soap opera, but that's no excuse because I've seen plenty of better performances in K-dramas. This guy is so dense, he's barely human. Very obnoxious performance. Another problem is that the competitive and or dramatic aspect to the cooking. This show's called King of Baking, and you don't even get to the competitive aspects of the cooking until episode 12. And even then, it continuously stalls for dumb side plots like temporary blindness, fear of ovens, and other nonsense. Yes, there's a fear of ovens aspect to this. And there's another K-drama cliche that rears its ugly head. The good old, "I'm going to tell you I hate you even though I really love you" shtick. And that's one of the worst K-drama cliches out there. I'm sure I'll do a video on the worst kinds of K-drama cliches, but that one is up there. It's almost never justified. Also, there's not much variety to the foods that are baked. It's basically just bread, and not even that many interesting kinds of bread. And one of the more interesting characters is the older sister in the family because she's very independent in her thinking. She does not take sides in this show. And I like that because she doesn't really like our main protagonist that much because he's kind of new to the family early on in the episodes. But she also doesn't like how her mother does business. She thinks her mother's just kind of a slime ball too. But this show basically ignores her character until the final few episodes, and that was disappointing. So is there anything good about King of Baking outside of the first 4 episodes that I previously mentioned? Yes, in fact, there's quite a few good things here to enjoy. Most of the side characters give solid performances. The father in this is played by the same actor who played the king in Jumong, and he's really good in this. The rival brother is played by Won-ju, who would later star in Bridal Mask, a better K-drama than this one. He's good in this show, King of Baking, because his character is primarily dislikable, but he has flashes of likability, which he portrayed quite well. The story does become more interesting and exciting during the second half of the series. This is when the baking aspects, as I said, kind of take the forefront. Most of the characters are properly developed, so I got to give this show credit for accomplishing that, and it does earn some dramatic impact at times because of that character development. The older sister and the childhood girlfriend, as I said, have their moments during the final handful of episodes, so at least they have that much. Some of the breads do look pretty tasty. And finally, the actual conflicts are pretty strong, and you really want to see the antagonists, go down in flames. So, King of Baking has stretches of terrible script writing and other flaws, but, in a certain sense, there's a certain enjoyability to it, kind of regardless of those negatives. But nevertheless, it did not live up to its popularity. I expected to be thoroughly engaged from start to finish, and in that sense, this K-drama falls short of justifying its hype. A few other good K-dramas that I enjoy more than King of Baking that focus on food are Daejang Gum from 2003, Pasta from 2010, and Gourmet from 2008. All of those K-dramas have scripts that are far less distracting than this one. So check those out first, I would say. Then you can move on to King of Baking later, or you can really kind of skip this one, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't know. If I think about whether or not I'm going to rewatch this at some point in the future, I don't know. It's not looking good. I'd rather just rewatch any of the ones I just mentioned. And if you could all do me a favor, please list some of your favorite K-dramas that focus on food in the comments section below. I'm always interested in watching those types of shows, so if you could help me out, on that, that would be great. And King of Baking, I think, is available on either Drama Fever or Viki. I think one of those legitimate sites has it. So, as always, I will see you next time.